the monogram on the glass.
What do you mean? So it's based off a dining book that Mrs. Vanderbilt has, of place settings, a place ranking visitor set to the left of the right.
What determines the house, like their job?
They're social.
Yeah, yes. But then you also intermingle like your friends and your family.
One course you'd face one way, and then the next course you'd turn
Oh,
to
I
the
didn't
other.
know that.
So just so that you broke up the conversation, and it, just enabled people to, well, you could not stop with the same person.
So is that what the Queen does?
That's what they do. So I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, people are watching.
Yeah.
Well, that puts you at an inconvenience because as soon as the Queen is done with her play, they take it away.
Well, you're maybe more British than me. Have you had the test?
I have. I am mostly Scotch, Irish, but a little bit of England thrown in there and part Cherokee. So.
Decided to buy the clothes from, or where was the inspiration coming from?
Often from magazines, because most of the magazines did a fashion bit, just like today, and it depends what people's aspirations were, really. If they would look at ordinary magazines or particularly fashion magazines.
Where would they order them from, though? So
Well,
the magazine themselves, or would they have someone come
no,
here?
it would usually have an advertisement like Harrods or somewhere, you see.
Okay.
And this would say, in our ready-to-wear department, or you can commission something of this, like this. It was something that had been going for a while, really, by this time anyway.
So who would measure you?
Well, you would go to the actual shop, but I wanted to say that one thing we're so lucky to have is that in our archives we have so many of Edith Vanderbilt's original magazines. So things she was looking at, things she was drawing inspiration from. And then she would visit the individual houses to then be fitted.
Hang on one second, please.
Keep going on about this.
Yeah.
If someone took your measurements, so then you kept a record of your measurements. Tell us a little bit about.
Well, I think the women were quite good at staying pretty much the same measurements, but then the individual houses of fashion would keep measurements, and I think for some individual clients, they could even keep a form. I think that's not quite as common, but if you were a very important client, that could be the case.
Yeah. Certainly the main houses did that, didn't they? If you had gone to Paris, once they had your form, that was kept, and they would then make adjustments as you slightly changed over the years.
So as you were recreating these wonderful outfits and dresses and costumes and all, tell us what was your inspiration? Where did you find the designs?
Well, the photographs in the Biltmore library, yes.
And the fabrics and.
Well, the fabrics are, a lot of them are new, of course, but all the lace, I think, and a lot of the individual motifs are all real. So we've just remounted them. But the trouble often with looking at photographs is you only see one aspect. So you have to make up your mind what happens behind. And at that time, even though we have now high definition photography, you can only see on the photograph what was there originally. It doesn't, they had no high definition. Everything was slightly fuzzy.
Do you find that there was any American inspiration, anything that was American, uniquely American, that was incorporated into the designs?
There must have been, but it's not necessarily apparent at this time. Later on, in the 50s, there's a lot of very good American design and influence. But at this time, people took most of their influence from Paris, I would say. Maybe a bit from England in the suits, but certainly dresses like that would be Paris, and it would be the House of Worth, as this dress down here is House of Worth, or Redfern, or Calosur, all sorts of houses that produced often 4, season shows a year, and then you would order from the winter collection, the spring collection, autumn collection, or the winter.
So you expect Mrs. Vanderbilt would have gone to New York, perhaps, to see
Yes.
collections? And
Yes.
Or even Paris. So they also had a home in Paris, and she had spent a lot of time in France. And so I think she was drawing a lot from the Paris, the Parisian houses.
Yes. It's much better if you can do it firsthand, of course.
right.
Yeah.
Now, what about costuming for like outdoor activities and
Yes.
daytime activities? Obviously, we're seeing in this room
Yes,
a
all the
wonderful
evening.
collection. All the
Yes.
evenings.
Well, it's the same thing. You would, if you were going on the Grand Tour, for instance, you would order the clothes that were suitable for each stage of that tour. And if you were going through cold countries, the furs would come out, the flannel would come out, and yeah.
Now, how many suitcases? Because it took quite something to.
Well, yes, it's, in the 50s and 60s, obviously, we talked about Elizabeth Taylor and her 37 or whatever trunks. But, there seemed to be no end of what these people would take.
We have an account of
good.
Mrs. Vanderbilt and Cornelia Vanderbilt making their way to Japan. They're preparing for their trip to Japan, and we have a little note from the butler that he's taken their trunks to the train station, and it's something like 27 trunks that they are then ferrying all the way across to Japan.
Oh, you must have had to have someone with you there.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Oh yes,
Yes.
one or two people, I have thought.
Why is it exciting to be here then and come and see these wonderful
Yeah.
clothes and recreations?
Well, it is just something that's completely gone now, isn't it? No one travels like that now, not even the film stars. No.
But you create for film stars. You create
Oh, yes.
for famous films. You're an
Yeah.
Oscar-winning designer.
Yes.
So tell us, where's your inspiration when you see a challenge like this at Biltmore?
I think the inspiration comes from the knowledge that I've picked up over the years, and then the particular things that feed us. In this case, the photographs of all these people that that led us on to this.
They come real, don't they? through your
Completely.
It was
And that's-
remarkable. I'm sorry.
No, that's why the clothes are so important in understanding people, because it's their outward show to the world of who they are, isn't it?
Why do you think it's important for people to come and see this exhibit here at Biltmore?
Well, I think it completely explains the difference between the way we live now and the way that these people lived. And I think that's always important, to see all the things that we haven't got either time for or the knowledge or the expertise. And so it should make us feel a little bit, I don't know, really.
Nostalgic a bit?
Yes, definitely nostalgic. But I was thinking, we're not as clever as we thought we were, because some of these things are just extraordinary that they produced. When you look at all those embroidered bits, they are absolutely exquisite. And the lace that was produced, not necessarily around this time, because lace was important, and it might be from 50 years before, it might be from 100 years before. Certainly we had some of Empress Eugénie's lace at one point, and then we were able to put it onto a dress almost of her time for Lee Remick in a film, and it gives such a definition, such a clear idea of how these clothes really were.
Quite something to move in.
Yes.
What was it like? Okay, do you want to stop for a minute?
Yeah.
Sorry. While we've got John, we're going to tap his brain.
Yes.
He is the expert. Hang on, we've got... Go ahead, Bill. Reverberates through this wonderful...
Yeah, it does.
Really
Very much.
has interesting acoustics in this room. You feel pretty secure. But we figured she wouldn't be moving around too much, so...
No.
How long did it take you two to put this together?
Oh.
We've been working it a long time.
Yeah.
It's been about 2 years
Yes,
from the beginning concept.
Yeah.
And then you all started working more than 1.5 years ago, I would say.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
And we,
Can you describe the style of the era? What does it look like which is so different?
Well, it's on a corseted form, and the ideal of the time was the S-bend. So the S-bend meant that you lean forward slightly, and the corset helps you to stay in that position. And so anything like the laces on the front of these two, it means they almost hang forward, and your bum is stuck out a bit at the back.
So tell us what we should be looking for when we come in and look at a dress.
Yeah.
So I should be looking at that sort of.
Yes, that's
so
right.
Tell me again. So what should I be looking for, John?
Yes, it's exactly what you're doing. It's that sort of pose that leans forward. It's almost as though you're presenting something all the time. Yeah. In some cases, it's your bust because that's what you're leading with. And but as you turn, the bum becomes more important. It's all it is emphasized by all the different ways that they put the trimming on, use the lace, and just the basic underneaths of these. So you often would wear a small pad at the back to emphasize the bum, and there would often be something here that gave a little more emphasis to the bust, but the shape was created by the corset.
So in a way, you're looking thinner, aren't you, when you're leaning
Yes,
forward?
you look thinner
I
from
have to remember that one.
you look thinner from the front, but from the side it has to go somewhere. And so here you don't look so thin.
I think we'll be getting to see some of the undergarments later on.
Oh,
So
yes.
perhaps we can
Yeah.
to sort of use those comments.
Yeah.
Is there something you could tell us about creating this that's been special for you as part of this?
One of the things actually was the shape of Marie Louise, because she in a way has the perfect hourglass figure, but it has been created by the fact that she wore a corset all her life, and of course she got bigger as she got older, but you still have an almost perfect hourglass shape.
So this is George's mother, and she's a particularly interesting one because her taste in fashion is just a little bit behind the other ladies in this exhibition. We're showing her, she's in a scene that's sort of a flashback. So she's in the late 1880s. It's actually matched to a John Singer Sargent portrait. But the thing that's so interesting is that's a shape that we don't see in women that often anymore, because she's worn a corset from a very young age and kept that smaller waist, but then grown at the bust and at the hips. And so it's a very unique figure. And John has really brought that portrait to life and made her really feel like a real person. So we feel like, I think for the first time, that George's mother is in Biltmore House, and it's very fitting because she was the first hostess of Biltmore House. He wasn't married yet when Biltmore was built. And so she was the first hostess and welcomed people to the house for the first time at Christmas. And so now we actually have her embodied through John's work and here at Biltmore.
Well, once Victoria had died, women stopped wearing black. I mean, I see colour.
Yes.
I see.
Yes. So from 1901, I think Edward brought in a very different era. And so you get a less staid look, you get much more ebullience, really, for the next sort of 10 years. And then things change again because the war was about to happen, and women were taking over men's jobs, so they could no longer wear this sort of thing, and clothes become simpler again, which the next exhibition will really emphasize.
How many changes of clothing I'm going to ask you, keep asking you questions.
Yes, that's fine.
But how many changes?
Whoops.
Okay, going to John. How many changes of clothing, Bob's going to he's good. How many changes of clothing would I have done as a guest here, would I've had to perform from the moment I woke up?
Yes. Well, it depends. It depends how formal it was, but maybe about 7 in a day. Would that be good?
I think 7 because of the level of formality, but also the recreational activities.
Yes.
So if you were golfing, which we know both ladies and gentlemen did, or if you were going out riding, you would certainly have different costumes for that, different outfits. So I think 5, 6, 7 is
Yeah.
very reasonable.
That's good.
Yes.
Okay, good. So, golly, I'm trying to imagine the number of clothes.
Yes, that's right.
Shoes. And
Yes.
you've not only created outfits here, but you've done the whole outfit. We've got gloves, we have fans,
Yes,
we have
yes.
parasols, we have. I'm noticing the hair ornaments, matching that. That was quite a challenge.
Yes.
Did you have some of that created here, or was it all created abroad?
So we did a little bit of both.
That's right, yes. Yes.
For the more important ones, for instance, we have a dress recreated for Edith that was her engagement dress. And it has a beautiful headpiece and an exquisite brooch. And that was all really done through Cosprop, that created the headpiece with your milliner.
Yeah.
And then the brooch was done at their recommendation with an amazing artist named Martin Adams, who took photography that we had that was taken at the house where the brooch was made before George actually purchased it. And then he worked from that to recreate in faux diamonds and faux rubies. And so every element of that was paid particular attention to. In other cases where we didn't have as clear photography, we took some artistic liberties to recreate things, or when we had great photography and just needed a few feathers, we created that here. So we did a little bit of both.
Yes.
And the footwear, because I mean, if you're standing, and I'm imagining
Yes,
just
yes.
trying to do this thing,
Yeah.
but you're always on your tips of your toes. Do we wear heels? Were we flat shoes? What was? Do we
No,
have
most of them
exhibit,
are heels.
high
Yeah.
heels?
Not, they can be very high. In the 1880s, some of them were extraordinarily high, weren't they? But now it's settled down a bit to a Louis heel that maybe is not much, 2.5
Yeah,
inches.
not too much. And we do have that displayed in one of the rooms. We have Edith Vanderbilt's Ladies Maid on display, and she is sort of carrying a pair of shoes across. So you get a sense of what a woman like Edith would have worn for shoes for dinner. So we don't actually show them in many of the rooms because, of course, the gowns go to the floor. But we wanted people to have a sense of how decorated they were, the beautiful metallic leathers that were used. So you get a little glimpse of that, even if you don't see them underneath the gowns.
Let's talk a little bit about the men's costumes. So they do all the same. I'm terribly sorry, but I imagine it to be terribly stiff. Talk
Yes.
a little bit about, I mean, because if the women are doing this,
Yes,
the
yeah.
men are doing this.
Well, yes, that's right. Yes. But they're still presenting themselves, aren't they? You know, if the ladies are leaning forward to present themselves, the men are definitely presenting themselves when they're in evening clothes. But even during the day, some of the clothes are quite stiff and formal. So it's very much being on show, isn't it, really?
Very much.
No relaxing, not even in your sort of, I was going to say your gardening clothes. I don't mean your
They were
gardening
garden.
clothes.
But we did try and show a little bit of that. So for instance,
Yeah.
the bowlers, I don't know if you've seen the bowling alley yet, but so
No.
to show the more recreational side, the cuts are a little more loose. And it is a little more relaxed feel. And so we tried to show all times of day, different levels of formality, really to convey a sense of what was happening during this time.
Okay.
Do you want
It's
to?
ready to go. At
Jolly
last,
good.
at
Hooray,
last. Jolly
hooray.
good. I agree. There are details in this dress. Now, you had to read into more than you could see in those fuzzy photographs. So
That's
when you're
right.
looking at them, tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about.
Well, as I was saying, the photographs aren't as clear as they are today, are they? When you look at old photographs, they've either gone a bit sepia or they're just a little fuzzy. You get the general idea, but if you were looking at something to recreate it, sometimes it gets a bit difficult. And so you have to rely on your knowledge of that time and what people were looking at. And again, the magazines come in useful there because they show you quite clearly what the jewels were, because all the fashion magazines had pages with the jewellery on, as well as the dresses. So you were able to choose what would go best with whatever your first choice of dress was.
Do you have a film that you worked on before, or a television show that had or a series that had a similar time period and the kind of imagery that you
Yes, yes, the Golden Bowl, really, the Merchant Ivory film, The Golden Bowl, is very much of this time, and very much also of the type of people that the Vanderbilts were. I think in Henry James's idea, the main man was America's first billionaire, and so when Nick Nolte played him, we had to remember that and create the people around him to match that status, really.
Do you have a sort of a sense of who these people were when you're creating a dress or
Yes.
an outfit for a man? Do you sort of get into his
Yes,
personality?
I think you do. But you have to know quite a bit about them before you can say possibly what they would choose. And you know what was available to them because of all the magazines, but to really understand what they were interested in. Some people, however rich they were, aren't at all interested in clothes and would take advice from their valet or friends. So it makes a difference to what your thought process is. I don't know whether George was interested in clothes. I'm still not sure whether he was. He knew what was right and he would wear what was right, but I think that was an inbuilt feeling rather than the joy of putting something on that was exquisite.
Now, Mrs. Vanderbilt, though.
What?
What about Mrs. Vanderbilt? Do you think she enjoyed her clothes?
I think Edith probably enjoyed clothes more than Cornelia, but I think we'd have to get advice on that.
Edith did.
What?
I think that Edith did
Yes.
really enjoy them, but I think you're right on with George,
Yeah.
that he knew what was right.
Yes.
Yeah, he was playing a role, really, wasn't
Yes, that's right. No, it's difficult to know completely because although we've got lots of information about them, it's not absolutely. You can tell, certainly for the next exhibition, there were a series of letters that gave us a clue as to how interested Edith was in certain things. But you don't always get that, yeah.
When we come as a visitor,
Yes.
when I look at those clothes, I must fantasize. What
Yeah.
would it have been like to have been here? What do you want our visitors to see and feel when they see your recreations?
Well, I think we want people to really believe that this is how they were. And I think, now I see them more mounted. I think we have created that feeling because if you look at the ladies in their dresses, you don't really want to get too close to them. So that means they've got a formality to them. And because they're on show, you don't feel you could go and throw your arms around them and say, "Hi, how are you doing?" There's definitely a slight stand off, and you have to be invited in. Is that true?
I think that's especially in these.
Yes, especially in the very formal clothes.
Turn towards Julia a little bit.
Sorry.
She's no longer with us.
But she's so important.
Well, see, we're going to talk to her. We want to hear from you right now. Thank you. Sorry.
I don't really have anything else to ask
No,
you for this
no,
purpose, for the purpose of why
Yeah,
we're here.
yeah.
And I'm so sorry we're just not doing a whole documentary.
Oh.
On this. we could go on and on. So,
Yeah.
is there anything that you would like to say about what it was like to work with the Biltmore folks, or be here at Biltmore and see your creations in their
Yes.
settings?
Well, of course, it's a completely unusual experience, isn't it? Working like this, because every film you do has a very finite run-up period, and often nowadays it gets shorter and shorter. So when I first started, we had about 3 months to create a complete film. Nowadays, it's sort of reduced to 8 weeks, and with some films, it can go down to 5 or 6 weeks. So time is the essence, really. And looking back at films like The Golden Bowl and the clothes that I've seen from it, I don't know quite how we managed to do that in 8 weeks. I suppose the one thing is that you don't have to do everything at once. You do have the, if you've got a schedule, then you know when you have to prepare it for. And so certain things can run on into the first opening weeks of that schedule. And maybe the ball scene isn't until 5 weeks in. You know, you hope for that. But sometimes, as in one of the productions we're working on now, they have all their principals on in the first week. And that makes it very difficult for the designer because sometimes the stars aren't available until 10 days before you start, or you have to traipse miles and miles to meet them either on location or wherever they happen to be at that time.
John, what do you call yourself? What do you see yourself as? You brought to life eras of the past through your...
Oh, yes.
How do you see yourself?
It is design, but it's also looking at the craft of how things are. And so you've got to try and think through the way that people would have done things at a particular time and make sure that the outside looks like that, even though you've used nylon net to support certain things and, you know, all those sort of cheats that you have to do. But in general, you want it to give the impression very closely, however close the camera comes, as to this is it, this is how it was. Or at least that's the work for Merchant Ivory that I did. Of course, nowadays, different films want to give different impressions, and you don't look to those films for any sort of historical truth.
One last question for me. So
Yeah.
what does Biltmore want from you? And what have you brought to Biltmore?
Oh dear, I can't answer what I brought to Biltmore, but I have, you know, it has been so amazing being here, just soaking up the atmosphere of the place and learning so much about how life was, you know, right from the very beginning of it. Having the tour yesterday gave you a very, very clear idea of what one would have done if one had been a visitor then, a servant then, or even George, with all the things that, you know, talking to the various people he had to talk to, just for the layout of the place. It's just very amazing. And the organization has certainly come through from his day to this. It's just a very extraordinary experience.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. To fantasize, don't you? In this wonderful...
The doors are shut.
I know.
All right, Leslie, tell us how many costumes are here, how many objects are here, what we're going to get to see.
So for this exhibition, we've created more than 25 outfits that the Vanderbilts and their friends wore, and then to that we've added 25 more from the period, and altogether the exhibition is more than 55 individual outfits. That altogether is more than 605 individual objects, and so from shoes to necklaces to headpieces to fans, it's every accessory you can imagine from the Gilded Age, and it's all on display.
And we want you to come into this and absorb it and really transform.
So the idea of this exhibition is that you're welcomed as a guest of the Vanderbilts and that you are part of the house party that's coming, and you get to see guests as they arrive.
It's really loud. I'm sorry.
It's Deanie. Is it 4:30?
Are they getting people out?
Deanie just arrived. Ellen's meeting her, but that's what that is, I think.
Rolling?
So we, you know, as a visitor, we want to immerse you into the time period. We want you to fantasize that you're a guest here with the Vanderbilts.
As a visitor, we very much want you to be able to imagine what it would have been like. I'm going to do that again.
Yeah.
As a guest at Biltmore, we very much want to imagine what it would have been
Let's say
like.
you to imagine.
Yes. As a guest at Biltmore, we want very much for you to imagine what it would have been like to come to be a guest of the Vanderbilts, to be staying at Biltmore, to be part of these grand house parties, what everyone would have been wearing, what the conversation would have been about, and just to be immersed in the experience.
Oh, loved that.
Yay.
Look, we use local artists to make.
So we've paid attention to every detail in this exhibition, down to the butler and the footmen, the buttons that they wore, and we've worked with local artists to actually cast buttons from our original costumes so that they are monogrammed with the Vanderbilt V, and every detail is in place.
Okay, now you're making us do a close-up of a button.
Yes.
Then-
It's worth
All right,
it.
Put it on your list.
It's
All right,
worth
we've gotta
it.
do a close-up of the buttons. It was not me. I didn't make it.
They are worth
Okay,
it.
we're going to have to do a close-up of the buttons. Okay. The Biltmore Foundation? Who's bought the clothes? Just tell me.
It's Biltmore's collection.
Okay. Biltmore's collection is going to be shown for years on. You know what I mean? You've had these made so that you can use them as part of your...
We have, but this is a pretty unique experience. So you'll never see exactly this show again. So I don't know that so we'll have them as part of our permanent collection, but this house party experience that you're seeing is
Okay,
a
that's what I
unique
want you
one.
to say.
Okay.
Say yes, you will, yes.
Okay.
What is that?
So we've recreated this clothing in immaculate detail, and we intend to have that as part of our permanent collection. But this exhibition is a very unique experience, and you're really welcomed into the house. You're seeing a house party in action. You're part of the experience, and this is really unique and the only time that you'll get to see it. Does that work for you? Do you want me to do it
Works for
again?
me.
Okay.
Try it a little shorter, just
Okay.
so I have an
Sure.
option.
And don't start with so.
Okay.
Just go.
The clothing was created with immaculate detail, and it will become part of our permanent collection. But the intention of this exhibition is to create an experience, a once-in-a-lifetime experience, where you're welcomed into the party and you're seeing the atmosphere, you're having the experience.
I know he said it, but I want, we have over 100 photographs that we use to reconstruct.
So we drew from our archives and looked at more than 100 photographs to reconstruct and recreate these pieces, and paid incredible attention to the details and brought each of those moments to life.
Those are the questions we've handled. Is
Okay.
there anything that you feel...
Do you want me to set up who John is, or you're going to do that?
I'll do that.
Okay.
I'll do that. I'll introduce him.
I think things that are really unique about this. So to my knowledge, there hasn't been an exhibition like this anywhere. There's no other house museum that's ever recreated costumes, and nothing on this scale. So that's really unique. To see them and you can tell me what of this you would want, to see them in situ in here, it's so much more than seeing them in a gallery experience. You really get the feeling of what tea would have been like, the children, in the oak sitting room. It's a very different experience than seeing them, say, in a museum gallery.
What we're seeing is all stratas of the people who lived in this house. So you're going to and talk about going to the back, backstage, but a backstage
The service.
tour. Just give me a sort of a statement to wrap that unique opportunity
Okay.
and rooms that were never open before.
So I said so. One thing that's very unique about this exhibition is we're not only showing you the Vanderbilts and their friends and what they would have been wearing, but also the service side, the housekeeper, the butler, the houseboys, the maids, everything that they would have been wearing and also what they would have been doing, and all the work that goes behind the scenes into pulling off one of these wonderful house parties.
That was lovely.
We got the laugh, we got to it. That's good. We got through it. Man.
Is there anything else that you can...
The audio.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you for saying that.
So I won't say it so.
It's too easy to do it. I can cut it off, don't worry about it.
One component that's very important about this exhibition is the audio tour. It's different than any audio tour we've ever done at Biltmore before. It immerses you in the experience. So it's binaural, it is sound directed, and it's led by the butler and the housekeeper, and they lead you through the house. They tell you what you're seeing, who you're seeing, what's going on during the day, what you'll be doing next, and it's a totally different way to experience Biltmore.
Do we have a headset? Something close by? No? Okay, all right, we're going to have to show someone with the, you know what I mean, let's talk about the auditor.
We need some of the recording, so I can put a mic to the device.
Just for a few seconds, can we use like 15 seconds?
We'll be able to send you a clip of that.
Oh, perfect.
Just a small bit we can improve.
Okay,
Great.
perfect. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you want some?
Oh, yes, that's my favorite question.
Sure. Like what we'd want people to
Because
take away.
I want to set it up. I want to set it up as that. Can you imagine?
That's what it's about.
You tell me.
The idea behind the exhibition is allowing people to
No,
imagine.
you just tell me. Can you imagine?
Oh, So can you imagine being a guest of the Vanderbilts and to come here to be welcomed into their home, be conversing with these artists, these writers, what it would have been like to be staying in one of these rooms and to be waited on hand and foot and have everything go so beautifully with no friction, no jar, as a quote that we have from our archives. Just what it would have been like to be at Biltmore at the turn of the century and to be a guest of the Vanderbilts.
Right, now do that for me again.
Okay.
And don't say so, please.
And just
Sorry.
can you imagine what it would have been like? Just do it slow.
Okay.
You know.
Yes. So can you imagine what it would have been like to be a guest of the Vanderbilts, to be welcomed to Biltmore, to have tea in the Tapestry Gallery or an evening after dinner in the library, to be welcomed into the banquet hall, have a performance and have the crystal sparkling, just to see that in person. And that's really what we've tried to create with this exhibition.
We'll eliminate the soap.
Did I say it again?
Kid, I'm teasing.
Don't tease her. She's done very well. She's worked very hard.
Are we good?
And we know, yes, we're good on
And
this.
do you want some 2 days worth of padding below it? So they're all custom padded out and then they're steamed, but everything's built out below them.
Would she
to-
have had her own custom form here? You know, they would have made a dressmaker's form.
They would have had those, for instance, at the fashion houses, but hers,
Okay. Just in case you needed adjustments. You know?
well, she would have gone to be, they traveled so often that it say she were pregnant or she would have gained weight, which really wouldn't have happened as much as it does for us. I know. Well, we don't have all day to walk and, but so she would have traveled enough that that would have been done at the house, the fashion house, pretty much. And then things could always be let out or taken in, and her lady's maid would do those adjustments. Pretty much she would have maintained she was very thin into her 40s and 50s and had been corseted from, I never had it.
You're not cheating enough here, lady.
Cheating here?
Ah,
That's going to be very exciting.
Okay.
wow, hang on. She's a pro. She's done this.
I don't like these wrinkly gloves. I know. I almost want to take George's, but I have them sewn in, so.
You're just doing your thing. Go.
Okay. And then
Hang on, Bob. you have any petticoat underneath that or?
Mhm.
There we go. Okay, that's lovely. We'll do some close up of you
Okay.
adjusting that.
Do the gentleman?
Mhm. No. Understood. Do you want me on this side or this side?
Side you want.
Okay.
He's got his shoulders covered.
Just the gloves in the front. And then the trousers a little bit. That's good. We're good. We're going to do close up.
Do you want
Back to our
do you want this or you- now I'm doing it for real. Okay. Here.
Ready, go. Going down to the bottom of the dress and stop when you get down. Stop right there. Thank you.
I told Leanne 4:30. I told Leanne 4:30 at the Lions.
At the front door?
Yeah.
You're happy, I'm happy.
Okay. I'm happy.
Perfect. Let's do the gentleman.
Go Philip.
Oh,
And second. Go. Just keep doing the gloves.
okay.
Take your hands out, please, and gloves. Go. Thanks. That's perfect. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Thank you. Okay, you want to do the bow tie?
Yep.
You get set, please. Go. That's great. When you're happy, I'm happy.
I'm happy.
Good. We'll do the pants next.
Okay.
One second, please.
I may do that one first.
Okay, I'll show. I'll
Okay.
do both. So you can do your thing. Ready? Go. When you're happy, I'm happy.
Okay. I think we're good.
Good.
Go through Mr. Vanderbilt's bedroom and then your Xavier would come out. And then where you would go up the stairs. Tell the host up there, with marketing, and check to see, and then say gloves in.
Okay. You think there's someone still up?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
lives on the internet forever, as you know. You guys are so kind to share it from your
I
website.
know, and you know what's creepy is because I have been interviewed by my friend Heather Burgess. She's sneaking, next thing you know, she's like talking, and then there's like a mic going up my shirt, and then there's a camera, and she's got that charm. And then I've had people stop me like, oh, "You're the one that comes out of the room." Like, that's creepy.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Age and everything. No, man, go on. Thanks, Sean. You want me to start closing? When did that happen? Has that always been?
Charge it.
You know what that is? When did you become a chocolate? I started right before Chibulu, and then I stopped until Christmas. The big first week of January. Where are you all staying? You're staying the inn.
Yeah.
Oh, that one's nice. If you're able to get the breakfast,
Did we get the breakfast last time?
We didn't stay there. I didn't. We stayed at the other one.
Yeah, we still did.
Do you want me to leave these on or?
Learned enough. I don't.
no biggie. Maybe with my colleague Lenore, she's tougher than me, so.
Okay, thanks for the warning.
You're right. She's from New York, so.
Okay.
It makes you think twice when you're out there.
Yeah. I think the trick is to just take your time.
It is so true. Think about your dad, take
Julia
time.
gave us enough time.
Hey, is there a certain way I know you turn off the light for Teddy Morton? Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, okay. All right, thank you. Okay, bye. Bye. Oh, no, no, totally good. Enjoy your evening. Okay, bye. Bye. Oh my God.
Okay, so it was terrifying.
Yeah, it was super cool.
Really?
Super cool. They can actually see how the door, how that one's.
You know, shop with like a buoy stuff there.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've never been here before, so
Oh, have you?
this is the first time seeing it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what's cool about this room, this room, is that you can walk behind the fireplace, the access. That originally was the palazzo in Venice. Hey, I'm sorry to bother you. Just a real quick question. Okay. So I need to go up to the balcony to switch it off though. Okay, okay. I'll do it. All right, thanks Dan, appreciate it. Okay. Okay, bye-bye.
Christmas is years ago, they used to have to go there for the lights. And we
Yeah.
And so we are.
Apparently.
Cross him,
You should not know. I will find out and I'll let everyone know. I'll be glad to take that for you.
And we, yeah, and that's the exact, one of the exact photos we have.
All right, well, we've got
The children.
The one with the green.
Yes.
And they,
I think we do have that one, Edith, right here.
we do this one.
Yeah, that one and then one of the kids in the back.
Okay.
Julia,
And
Yes, sir.
are we through in this room?
See Pisco, we can see the Tennessee. It's a ball.
Yes.
So it's off 209 going to Hot Springs.
That must be a reality check coming from Surrey and going to Vines Creek.
Do you know the area at all?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, it is. It really was. And it's interesting, our daughter married an Irishman. He's an engineer from Cambridge, PhD.
Wow.
But people go off in the car.
Yeah. Is that family? Down from, my great grandmother is from Silva. Oh, yeah. And so you pass through Coast Creek. Yeah. And then they left, we think it's up on the upwards of 125,000 plus. Yeah, and it was overused, because the price was.
So he left his younger brother to run the railroad.
He's rather interesting because his other brothers and sister-in-law, they're all involved. He's kind of, Mr. Vanderbilt goes back to his deep Vanderbilt roots, not the capitalist. I mean, they're farmers from Staten Island. And I think that's what he did. He took this wealth that he had and merged it with his genetic DNA and put it together, and that's why you get Biltmore.
I'm giving money for the arts and craft movement coming through. It's incredibly creative, space that was, Asheville. That's been
The last day was actually Friday. I used to be the supervisor in the field department.
Stores used to do, I guess, the department stores.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, like,
Simple.
from a conservation perspective, conservative.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could,
You're gonna learn from the ground up and reach out to those three folks who did it, and he sort of became an expert. Amazing is the whole street, and she recently reupholstered all of the bank which is why they look so shiny and new, and which is why.
the other way. Jay still got a light and she was.
Right. Yeah, what's that, Laura?
Yeah.
Really here? Yeah, she's my boss.
Right.
Well, and then our boss lady, her is Ellen. She's got short bob, maybe it's her.
Pull it back.
Certain departments gravitate towards females, like collection management, but, and Bob, how long have you been with the Institute?
I freelanced for many years, but 5 years.
Oh, okay.
Full time.
Yeah, nice.
I
It's not you.
feel like I've been there.
But you
Report
get-
from you later. Yeah.
You get benefits now, so that's good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do we need to have security for anything, or?
We won't know until we know our pathway and whatnot. Oh, you.
Christy? Look more to your right. Almost done. This is good. We'll just give you some choices. You good?
Oh yeah. Takes that kind of battery, huh? Was that a Sony battery?
Well, it doesn't need a charge. Just like this.
You stood right there.
Yeah.
John, we thought you didn't have any questions.
And this is an option.
Yeah, he was great.
So where did you want to go after the, we're planning to go like to, where did you want to go?
What we wanted to finish
And the second one was going to say, the second one was going to say,
we're going to do tomorrow for 7 for tomorrow. So let's think realistic. Well, I tell you what, after this, let's do the base. Let's get the donuts out of the van. And let's do the okay, so we'll do the kitchen, the sink was nicely clean, and
We're increasing screen speed.
I will just know, might be a little bit. We got the scorecard.
actually, let's do both. As I say, one of the things here is I know it's not that there, but
Gotta watch it.
Yeah, they're downtown. It'll be yeah, it brings a whole other. No, even us, it's like, oh, I love that place.
Okay.
Stare him down. Okay, yes, wonderful. Yeah, this banking setting took us almost a full day to do. All did their piece first. We had to measure exactly what was the center of the table. And they put these beautiful silver flowers on there because we do have the original silver on the table. So we can't have the real flowers, of course, in there. But that is all the real Baccarat crystal with George's monogram.
gorgeous.
And his real china with the GWV.
Let's go back.
Little tiny glasses, the sherry glass in the stem is about like a millimeter thick, so it's terrifying. But yeah, that's what we're trained to do.
The layout and how everything's precise and placed.
Oh yes, we had a measuring stick with a template, so everything is to the
Okay,
inch.
Julia, give me one more.
Quicker, just so I have an option.
You ready?
Okay.
Go.
So yeah, we love the table setting, and the banquet hall is one of our grandest rooms. with
Okay,
all of
guys,
the
I wanted you to
tapestries.
come and talk. Just do the whole thing.
Okay.
Thanks. Go.
So this is the first of our 11 mannequins in the banquet hall, which is very, very full. Yeah, so last year we had, I think 5, maybe 6. So them in
I'm
addition.
not. Go.
Yes, so there are infinite little details on the table, from the folding of the napkins to placement and the distance of the silverware. Even if you see every single place has a place card.
Okay, walk along.
One of the characters, one of the people who visited Biltmore on the place cards. And of course, with their individual little bud vases for extra
Perfect.
fanciness.
Good job. Good job.
pressure. Everyone's looking at you. Don't look at her. Don't look at Mr. Bob.
Okay.
Rule number one. Well, let's start with the audio guide. This is a new immersive experience. So I want you to tell me about the audio guide and the different routes around the house.
Okay. So we have a new audio guide that we have developed for this particular exhibition. It's been months in the making. So you will be transported through the house with the head housekeeper and the butler as your guides. Mr. Vanderbilt has requested that they show you around. So you'll hear this narrative tale throughout the house, both upstairs and downstairs, experiencing what the guests are doing as well as what the servants are doing to prepare for the large dinner at the end of the evening. And this new exhibition, this new audio guide will take you through the butler's pantry for the first time ever on the self-guided tour. So it is a new route for our guests to enjoy. And
we're going to have to do...
I know.
You're really closing your eyes. If you
And
okay.
Look at
you
me.
can blink.
You
okay.
know this.
Get in my groove now?
Yes. Now you're in your
Okay.
groove.
Just tell us.
I need it like in
Little
two
bit?
sentences.
Okay.
The audio guide, different routes to the house.
Okay.
Okay? It's a new... As a guest,
Yes.
the audio guide takes you around.
Okay.
Like you're a guest.
They are guests. So during your visit to the... Sorry, let's start different.
Just let it keep running.
Yes.
Okay.
So for this exhibition, we have an all-new audio guide which will take you through the house, led by the head housekeeper and the head butler. It will be an immersive experience, and it will lead you through the butler's pantry for the first time on the self-guided tour.
All right, going to do it again.
Okay.
And always smile at me.
Yes.
Happy day. Okay, let's do it again.
Give us 2 seconds or 3 when you get through. Just looking at you, don't
Just
make a
look
face.
at me, and I'm just going to hold your gaze, okay?
Okay.
Until I break, and then you'll know we're good.
Okay.
All right? So tell me.
With this exhibition, we have an all-new audio tour led by the head housekeeper and the butler who are guiding you throughout the house. It is an immersive experience. You will get to see the guests and the servants, and it will lead you through the butler's pantry for the first time on the self-guided tour.
Okay.
All right,
We've got the sync going on here.
Okay.
All right.
Let's go.
The house has 33 guest rooms, and typically you would be invited here to stay for 2, maybe 3 or 4 weeks.
Yes.
And that would be an awful lot of clothes changing, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes. You want me to go right into that, or do you want me to do
if you can.
Okay.
Let's see how it goes,
Okay.
because I want to sort of flow it. If we can. If not, we'll break it up. But
Okay.
don't worry about it.
Okay.
So the house has...
So George Vanderbilt created Biltmore in mind, George Vanderbilt created Biltmore with his guests in mind. He included 33 guest rooms and invited dozens of friends and family here at a time to spend weeks at Biltmore. A visit could be a couple days, but it could be up to a month. So you were really part of the family when we were here at Biltmore. Sorry, let me pause about that.
It's all right. No,
Yeah.
that was great.
That was good.
Okay.
Lovely. And typically you would change.
Yes. Those guests would arrive here with many trunks that could weigh up to 100 pounds filled with their many changes of clothes. Guests would have to change 5 to 6 times a day depending on all the activities that they would be doing. There would be different customs for clothing for breakfast and tea, as well as all of those outdoor activities such as driving and horseback riding. So they would bring many, many clothes with them, and they would be assisted by the valet and the ladies' maid to change into those clothes throughout the day. They didn't bring their own valet or ladies' maid. Biltmore would provide a maid of their own to attend to you.
Let's do that again.
Okay.
It was great.
Okay.
I love what you did, and I can use it
Okay,
without question.
great.
So we went through the 2 or 3 weeks. I love the fact there were big heavy trunks coming.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now let's do a piece then that you could have brought your lady's maid, or
Okay.
let's not talk about they would provide somebody who would be
Okay.
in charge of dressing you 4, 5, 6 times a day depending on the activity.
Right.
Would they also have maintained your clothing and cleaned it?
Yes, to a certain
So-
degree, yeah.
I mean, that was their job, right?
Yes. All right. Guests would arrive with trunks and trunks filled with clothing, as they would change up to 5 to 6 times a day, and of course they couldn't wear the same outfit twice. So it was the job of the valet or the lady's maid to attend to you and help you with those clothing changes for each activity.
The ladies' maid would also mend your clothing and clean.
Yes. It was also the job of the lady's maid or valet to care for those clothing, make sure they were brushed clean at the end of the day.
That one again.
Yeah.
Take your time, take a deep breath, we're good.
It was also the job of those servants to maintain those clothing, brush them clean at the end of the day, of course not thrown in a washer like we do today, but they would be cared for in their own special way.
Let's do that one again. It was also the job to mend and clean and, and maintain the clothing during your stay.
Yes. It was the also job, It was also the job of those servants to mend and clean that clothing throughout your stay, as many of it was very delicate, different types of fabrics that required a lot of care.
I like that.
Okay.
And we're going to use that over Mr. and Mrs. V's bedroom.
Great.
Okay. 30 staff, up to 30 staff lived in the house, just the house itself.
As far as servants go, we had up to...
Let's start, I don't...
Just, you don't...
okay. The staff here,
okay.
Yeah.
The staff at Biltmore could be up to 30 individuals at a time, both men and women, working upstairs and downstairs, making sure the house was continually running. Many of them lived here in the house or above the stables and attended to everything that needed to be done.
That was lovely.
Okay.
Don't change it.
Very good at ending in a smooth way.
Just with a flurry, all right, I'm just going through our questions.
Okay.
I'm just going through our questions, and all right, we're going into the kitchen. We're going to go into the kitchen with her, so we can just use her voice. Or do you want to do her voice now?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
You want to do her voice now in case? Okay. So it's good to have options.
Yes.
All right. When we go in the kitchen, you know what we're going to see. We don't know what we're going to see. The kitchen was almost a 24-hour activity, I'm sure.
Yes, very, very early to very, very late, yeah.
Yeah. So imagine you're standing in the kitchen now, and you're giving us a nice little 1 or 2, 3 sentences about the kitchen, how busy it was, hot, steamy, height of activity.
The kitchen would be bustling all day long with numerous kitchen staff working hard on each meal. Here in the kitchens we have a 1904 menu being made, including tomato puree, cow tongue, calf's brains, Charlotte russe in the pastry kitchen, and plenty of fresh fruits and vegetables from the estate farms.
Lovely.
Okay.
For this exhibition, we've had some very specially created fruits and vegetables for the displays.
Yes.
And that's taken a lot of effort on your part.
Yes. We have worked with a custom fake food artist, faux food. So let me start over.
Yeah.
Leslie has scolded me for using fake food. It is faux food. We have created a custom menu of faux food for our kitchens for this exhibition, which is replicating a menu from 1904 that is 7 courses long and includes fish mousse, calf's brains, fruits and vegetables, roast turkey, Charlotte russe for dessert, and of course would be wrapped up with coffee. Not that we're displaying coffee.
You have created, or you all have created, this 1900 to 1910s recreation of the time for people to experience.
Yes.
What do you want people to come away with? What do you want people to feel and see? What do you want people to know about Biltmore and who it is and what it was?
I love this exhibition for how immersive it is. For the first time, we're not just making a visual display, but we have an audio experience for our guests that will really pull them into the story and make them feel like guests. We even have tried to pull in the sense of smell as well, so we're really trying to engage the guests in every way to make them feel like they are a part of it rather than having to use their imagination.
Can you imagine what it would be like to stay here? Well, you must have imagined. Yeah. So if you were a guest here, I want you to, many of us, fantasize about, golly, if I had that much money, if I was invited to a house party. For many people walking around, it is stepping into a fantasy.
Yes.
How do you want them to feel?
To be a guest at Biltmore is almost impossible to imagine. Everything would be cared for, attended to, anything you desire. You could do anything you want outside or in the house. There's an endless amount of activities, or you could just sit and read on the loggia for hours. It's anything you want to do. And we know that guests who stayed here expressed how much they loved being guests here, how hospitable George and Edith were. And it just, by all accounts, it was an amazing experience, and they were loath to return home.
That was lovely. Death walk upstairs. Those are the questions that we wanted, and I think you've done it beautifully. Is there anything you want to say, anything you want to add that's just sort of, I think you just did it actually.
Yeah,
so
I think I covered it.
I think you covered it.
Okay.
If you could just stick with us when we go to the kitchen, we don't know what Mr. Bob wants.
Are we through?
Yeah.
We are through, sir. And she does mention the butler's pantry, so maybe it's hard with all the reflection here.
One who would attend to Mr. Vanderbilt specifically,
Right.
especially for the clothing changes. The footmen were everything else, basically. They would answer the front door, they would help serve the meals, set the tables, polish silver.
And the butler would supervise. There was a hierarchy.
Yes. Indeed.
What's her full title job? I know she does something related to costumes.
She has to be
She's written
well,
several books. Yeah, she's written several books about it. Very costume.
It's actually got some silver in it.
Yeah, it does, isn't it?
Yeah, I've seen a couple that she's posted recently.
I want to see the reflection. I mean, yeah.
I love that. Yeah, it's like, that doesn't look like a...
So this is more of your what you have to use them. Do they?
Well, when they recently cleaned every single item in here and inventoried it. They just finished this past fall. It took 4 years of doing that once a week, I think. But they were using.
But yeah. Well, they're not used, are they? It's really the grime from the disc.
Exactly. Yeah, they're just cleaning them to continually be preserved.
5 photographs. That's the only thing I need.
Okay.
When can I? All right. As long as I can get it by Saturday. Friday. Yeah, tomorrow. Right. Lovely. Saturday in season. Oh, they were going old. They had to use them up.
Yeah, I know. This was November.
That was great. We got it's right. Were you on your knees? You got dirty knees.
It was outside.
It was outside this morning, so I just was very sad. Just like, oh, they sent it to me this morning at breakfast, and I said, no, it's on the master account for breakfast and lunch tomorrow, or today, lunch today.
Yeah, I emailed with before we planned to do that,
Yeah,
so that's why.
right. No, but we're most grateful. I don't know what else to do. Okay. What thing is an exhibition? Because it would have just done this because of the weight.
Yeah.
No, just we wouldn't have. One can never tell. But I'm sure. Would the that have been a pass through? What was that?
This is the power supply for the zero box. So it was on DC electricity, so there were acid battery for that. Either that or it's just wires that go in the sub-basement where the batteries are. It's a little unclear, but ultimately, yes, this was just, we have fuse boxes that look like this. So that would be okay. Bell.
That's not a good idea in the house. I have a bell on the front door
They're like, why didn't the social grow? Like, well, we're dedicating 8 hours a month to it. That's all we're allowed to dedicate to it. It was for retirement. It's obviously not. That
Okay, I'm not, but I can edit this. I can edit it. It's a bit too slow, though, you see. Yours was better as moved. Where's the drawing? Okay, so I go, okay, now, opposed to the other one.
Did you trim it at all?
Yes, I did.
Good.
I trimmed it to.
Perfect. Yeah, there we go.
I want to show you the pictures because show you what does that mean? Field of boundary.
So I love this picture of Willie.
Oh, okay. Yeah, do your thing. This is where we're going for a little bit.
And we're all playing for character. And we're just going all silly for an hour. Okay. Is that like anything? Yes. That's what I heard. Yes. So photos.
Really? I was wondering if that's the first thing they would ever made.
My mom claims they're her favorite. So about her actress in the 70s. But yeah, it's funny, they both claim credit in different ways.
Wait, yes, in terms of, so I like to go to that room and then Mrs. B's room. And then we're just going to go through the trunks. Okay. Yeah, that's what I took.
So the photo where it's just like from the back of the
Yes.
two. Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't know where
So
it
we
was.
want to do it with his camera because, you know, that was gorgeous. But it'd be an intimate invite.
So if we do that.
Hopefully they should be down the heaven. I think that's a good time to do that.
All right, so we're not worrying about magazines. That's it.
Okay.
Oh.
You're like, I'm panicked, but we got it. We did.
We did. You know, it's just. Oh, please, shit.
Well, you got a van, it'll be, I'm just kidding.
This one.
Throw them on in, like they would fit.
Lenore's like, you're never. I guess they are pretty big, huh?
They are.
Good, this is giving us some more.
She had help from, I think a few days with that. She said she got a script.
Okay.
All right, so.
Triggers, they're all just gone. And we make them. Some of our media probably have collections.
I'm trying to think of the
What time is it?
You can back up your mic. Is, you know, in the old days, when this
There's the iCloud is for.
That's right,
Apple,
Apple,
right? They
Apple.
have iCloud.
So I've got that as well as a driver. So you've got this thing. It's the same thing. It's like, you know, they take over. Isn't it?
Like it knows what you're thinking before you're thinking.
It is freaky.
Yeah.
And this password stuff. You know, I was one of the people that.
Of course, I think I'm in the shot.
Are you really?
Look at the mirror, man.
Not sending it to us, so I got it in junk mail. So there's no origin of the email, but it's right through. And if I tighten up some of my,
Like, and they doubled it like 5 years ago or something.
she's standing like that.
Yeah, she is.
But they would have had that corset would have made them stand in that shape.
Yeah.
No one was ever comfortable. No. What's the game? This kid's small.
I haven't.
It's work. It does work. Actually, you get it early.
I
It works on me.
like cold leads, which has
Oh, yeah,
a zinc in it.
Yeah,
That,
exactly.
that works wonders.
That's
They would have those shades.
your desk.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay.
In general, that piece of furniture or?
After this, trunks, please.
Okay, you got
What
it.
do we do to get the equipment there?
So it's a half flight, that's a good question, half flight of stairs right before we get to that room. So
Maybe
we could leave it.
Mirrors are killing us.
Who's theirs?
Gotta get away from the girls because
The mirrors.
of reflections.
Oh, the mirrors, I thought you said theirs. Do we get that sign? Do we need it? We don't need it. We don't need it, honey. I think we're fine. Because we're going to use function. I've got more stuff in my neck and my goodness. And we've got the last shot up here is the luggage.
Oh, okay. We're not shooting in that room.
No, I just went with that. It's $2 or more a day.
Need the wording or just the picture?
Yeah, it would have been like all her personal stuff.
It's not even coming through.
Oh, it's the cart in Mr.
It's in that first ring.
Yeah.
First ring.
You want to call?
Oh, yeah. So we're
They would have hung, but some of the dresses would have pulled. You know, I can see them laying on the flat
Yeah.
tissue or something.
Right.
Because they were so delicate.
Right. Yeah. later on, there was a section added, and you can tell because it's, she later is a way for the servants to get out from section 6, from their rooms into the courtyard and come in the back side of the house.
Because if you go down to your own way to your room,
Right.
actually.
Yeah.
The phone.
Right.
Well, it's downstairs, but it's, you know, yeah. But you know, you did design it.
Quite possible. I don't know if we know that it's original to this room per se.
Okay.
But
Don't walk, please.
the style
So,
was in this room.
I don't know, that doesn't seem to go with it, does it?
The bed and the other desk.
Feel like I'm in a Hollywood set.
It's a subject that you're trying.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, and it can take you away from being in the moment. Stay
Creates bubbles.
Yeah.
Get kind of closed off. Same way it's you. Otherwise, it's great.
Is nobody visiting today? I know this room.
Oh, so we switch which side the tour route goes
Oh,
on.
that's.
So it's actually.
Oh dear, now I'm in trouble. I'm already getting, she's thinking of
Are you talking about using the
well, whatever, we just need
because I
to
was
find
going
out
to
what
say outside, it's not really. Out to the guest area, there's some bathrooms.
Oh,
But we'll walk you that way, yeah, and you'll have the option of where you either. Yes, Bob?
That's what I love about that. He doesn't give it to you just.
It's video.
Yeah.
It's not a still, it's video.
What makes him such a good day? And all I said was I was sort of shocked out because I sing shot and
Do you need to come through? Not right this second.
Now we tuck, right? We stand up straight and we tuck and we still do this bit, but we tuck. Because we've got nothing to brace us up, it helps our backs. Right? Obviously some sort of, I wonder what that image or where we got that concept from.
We call them throne chairs.
They keep us in line. I wasn't sure, is Leanne getting John?
Oh.
Okay. I wasn't sure, he may just be coming. But I wonder, okay. He may come on his own, or we go.